Thank you all for being here today. We were informed this morning that the release from Keystone Dam will remain consistent through the day at 275,000 cubic feet per second. Some folks living, especially in kind of midtown Tulsa and further south, may have even noticed delayed impact of that. You might still see water rising in stormwater grates or along the river channel. That is because as the corridor itself, if you will, the channel has widened as the river has elevated. It takes longer for those flows to get downstream and be felt at their full capacity. We still, though, want to remind everyone we're at 275,000 cubic feet per second today. But as we've said again and again throughout this process, we at the Emergency Operations Center and our response team, multi-agency response team that's focused on this, we are planning for and preparing for the flood of record. And we think everybody along the Arkansas River corridor ought to be doing the same. The rain levels are simply too unpredictable. We are expecting more storms to arrive tonight. Potentially tomorrow as well, and it's too early today to know how those storms might impact the releases from Keystone. So we continue to encourage everyone, please prepare for the worst case scenario that we've had in our history at the city, in this community, which is 305,000 cubic feet per second. All those maps that show what that impact would be are available at cityoftulsa.org/river maps. We encourage you to look at those and be prepared for that level of release, even though we remain at 275,000 cubic feet per second today. And best case scenario, we never get to 305, but we want people to be prepared for that in case it does come to that. Speaking of the weather tonight, we also want to remind everyone that while so many eyes and areas of focus are on the river and the flooding that's occurring along the river corridor, we are also expecting severe weather tonight. And we want everyone to be prepared for those storms as they come into the area tonight and be paying attention to local news and weather updates so that you can take cover if need be. Commissioner Keith and Governor Stitt and I met this morning with General Simonite. He's the commanding general of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, flew in from D.C. to see the levee system firsthand today. I'm incredibly grateful for the level of attention and focus that the federal government is bringing to this event in our community. To have a man who's responsible for the Corps of Engineers operations all around the world here in our community, wanting to see it firsthand means a great deal. And it's also reflective of the level of focus that the federal government has placed on this, that the state government has placed on this. We continue to have Oklahoma National Guard personnel walking those levees 24 hours a day in all weather conditions, checking for anything that might come up. But the levees continue to operate as they're designed. They do have a really heavy load on them. They're being tested in a way that they never have been before. We continue to encourage people that live behind those to please proactively relocate. We have sheltering resources available for people. We now have Tulsa Transit buses staged to take you to those shelters if you can't get there on your own. We even have an emergency animal shelter set up out at the fairgrounds to keep your pets at, so you don't have to worry about leaving them behind. We have all these resources established for people that live behind this levee system to utilize if they're willing to. And we continue to see that while it's high risk, There is not an emergency behind the levees right now. It's a high-risk situation when you're talking about infrastructure that's being tested in such a strong way, and the time for reaction should something go awry is just simply so much smaller than it is when we're talking about the overall river levels increasing. And so when you have such a small margin for error and high risk, we just think that it makes much more sense for folks to take advantage of the resources and opportunities available to them to proactively relocate, and we encourage them to do so. But again, I want to say how grateful I am to the governor for positioning the National Guard personnel here to do that round-the-clock analysis and reporting on the condition of the levee system. I've been told by the folks at the Corps that has been invaluable. And then on the flip side, to have the expertise of the Army Corps of Engineers and their personnel here to analyze and treat any issues that have come up in a very rapid fashion has meant all the world to us, and I know to the folks in the Guard as well. Lastly, well, a couple other things. Both along the river, we've had to establish, we've closed river parks, we have put up barricades in the parking lots, we have put up tape in areas where it is particularly unsafe for people, but we really encourage folks to just stay out of the river parks right now. It is unstable in there. There are sinkholes that have formed. There are trees that are tipping over because the soil has become so saturated and loose. And the river parks right now are not a recreational area. The river parks have transitioned into being a buffer between you and that very dangerous river. So please utilize them that way. Let them do their job now to protect you and stay out of them. If people go around the barricades that have been established or go around the tape, Tulsa police will cite them. We've tried to be nice and encouraging on this so far, but folks that are going around those barricades and violating the barriers that have been established in river parks are not only endangering themselves at this point, they're endangering our first responders as well. So in the river parks area, please stay out of them, and if you don't, you will be cited. In the levee area, we have a similar issue. For those of you who haven't been over in that area, the streets that lead up to the levee, almost all of them, these are narrow neighborhood streets. And we have large equipment that has to get around in there in a rapid fashion anytime a problem is identified. And it is very hard for that equipment to be moved in a quick way if you have sightseers bogging up the streets in there. So please, for the safety of the folks that live behind that levee, please don't go over there. We had a lot of sightseers over there yesterday. We have a lot over there today. Please respect the folks that live behind there and their property rights, and the fact that the quicker that our personnel, the Corps personnel, can get to any incident and repair it, the better the odds are of those folks' property and their lives being protected. So keep those streets free and certainly don't go behind the barricades. Lastly, we've had a lot of folks step up, both individuals and in our corporate community, wanting to know how they can help. And I'm very grateful to announce that the Tulsa Community Foundation and the Tulsa Area United Way have established a disaster relief fund for eastern Oklahoma. So not just for the Arkansas River Corridor, but for so many of the other events that are happening to our neighbors in this part of the state. And it will provide assistance to nonprofit organizations that are providing services and support to residents of eastern Oklahoma affected by flooding and storms. And you can go to tulsacf.org. Again, that's tulsacf.org/2019 storms. That's the numbers 2019 and the word storms all together for more information on how you can make a donation to that fund and help our neighbors in need. And now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Commissioner Karen Keith.
Thank you, Mayor. So as GT said, this morning we met with General Semonite and the governor, and as we work to get through this time period, we are also looking ahead to how we've got to make repairs on this levee once it's over, and then how we get the ultimate solution done. So it was really encouraging to have the general fly in from the Pentagon and put his eyes on our issue, because I believe he will become an advocate for us. Also, keep in mind that our federal delegation, they have all been very, very helpful. Senators Inhofe, Langford, Hearn, Mullen, they have all been here. They know we need a solution to this long term, but they've also got our backs right now. So we couldn't have a better team assembled to deal particularly with the levees right now. Now, we know that the levees are kind of a risky situation, but I will tell you, we've had issues. We've had water boils, and as quickly as they come up, with eyes and ears that are on that levee, we're getting those things fixed quickly. I want to mention at 65th West Avenue, I just left that area a minute ago, and people were calling in the television stations like, the levee's breaking, the levee's breaking. It is not breaking. That is a seepage area, and if you've been by there at all in the past, you've seen a little bit of water coming through. So there's simply more water coming through, so they're just trying to put additional sandbags on it. Again, we've got the best team assembled, the best resources assembled. At 49th West Avenue last night, they came in with these Chinook helicopters, and they had these huge bags of sand, and they dropped it in an area where there were some issues with integrity, and today everything is good. So what I will tell you is, I don't want anybody behind the levee to think, hey, we're A-okay. No, we would really, really like for you to self-evacuate. But I also want you to know that the best effort is being made to keep these levees working. And I'm very proud that the system so far, even with the issues, it's holding up. I mean, it's a 70-year-old levee, and I'm going to say so far so good. But it has been a team effort. Obviously, the levee district, the National Guard, they're out there, again, walking that levee, trying to see if there are issues. And the Corps of Engineers, you know, they've got their best and brightest. We have David back here working night and day for us as our hydrologist, but out there on the levee, EAF is up here helping as well. They have brought in their best and brightest from across the country to help us. So I know we have to all maintain caution. We've got to be aware of the issues tonight. With weather coming in, so just keep your eyes and ears open. I want to talk for just a second about the folks out of town and country. Most of those homes have been inundated, and the ones that are left, they still have power at this point, but they need to be watchful if we get another uptick in what's coming out of the dam. So I'll be out there as soon as I leave here to just kind of check on that situation. But I just want you all to know that you have the best team assembled to deal with this issue right here in Tulsa County and the region. So David, our star here.
Good afternoon. As Mayor Bynum mentioned, we are maintaining a release of 275,000 cubic feet per second out of Keystone Dam. The good news is that the elevation of the reservoir is peaking today, and you will see it begin to fall later during the day. Based on this, the current plan is to maintain the release of 275,000 cubic feet per second through Thursday, and at that time we will begin to decrease those releases. Now I want to strongly caution you that any additional rainfall is problematic, and so the potential for rainfall this afternoon and this evening, and again tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening, we will have to watch that very closely, because we don't have capacity in the reservoir for additional flood control storage. So just keep that in mind. We may have to make changes to the current schedule of releases and the plan to reduce those releases on Thursday if additional rainfall falls in the vicinity of the reservoir. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sergeant Shane Toole. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Tulsa Police Department. I'm going to be very brief and very direct. We believe that some of the areas that we've self-evacuated, some of the residents are staying behind because of concerns of their property. Well, that's also our concern. We're not going to have you vacate your property willingly and then leave that property unwatched. That's a part of exactly what we do. So you see a large faction of officers coming through and asking you to self-evacuate. Well, just know that there's another group of officers right behind them keeping a watchful eye on your community. So we've already caught several individuals trying to take advantage of people who have done the right thing and self-evacuated. And we have got no reports that I know of actual looting, but we've got several reports of officers catching people trying to attempt to do that. We will make contact with them. They will be met with a very unhappy first responder, and they will be either taken to jail or documented within the area. We don't take it very lightly. Your property, you worked very hard for it, and we respect that. And we want to make sure that we keep a good watchful eye on that for you when we ask you to evacuate. Lastly, I'll touch on something that the mayor spoke on just a brief second ago, the barricades that we put up in the River Parks area. That is for your safety. That is not for you to find a way to gawk at why we're barricading that area. The River Parks area has become very unstable. There's underwashing undertow that is taking sediment away from underneath the ground, and any slight amount of weight can make those holes open. One of the majors this morning in our briefing was talking about how a vehicle was seen going around one of the barricades and getting as close as it could to the river's edge to gawk. The weight of a human being can create one of those sinkholes. Can you imagine what a vehicle can do? Not only that, but there's water standing in the roadways, and it looks like it's about an inch, but what that water is not showing you is that there's more than likely a sinkhole underneath that water. It's extremely dangerous. If you do decide to go around those barricades on foot or in a vehicle or on a bicycle, again, you're going to be met with a very unhappy first responder. And you will be cited, like the mayor said. You are risking your life, and at that point, you're risking the life of a first responder to make sure that you're safe when you've decided to do something you were told not to do. And I'll end with this. The waters are extremely unsafe. It's very unsanitary. So if you decide that you want to be one of these individuals that goes and tries to see how close you can get to the water, there are snakes, there's sewage. It's extremely unsafe. It's a health hazard that you do not need to incur. So please, please listen to every one of these experts that are up here getting before you day after day and telling you to stay away from this water. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add, in the unincorporated areas, the police are doing a great job in city of Tulsa areas, but the sheriff's department is doing the same efforts out in all of the unincorporated areas, which is a wider swath of people impacted by this than anywhere else. So just want to give a shout out to the sheriff. And if you have an issue, please call the sheriff's office and let them know there is an issue, because they've done boat evacuations and other things. So they're doing a good job, but they don't know if you've got an issue, so be sure to call in. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Bruce Start, Executive Director of Tulsa Health Department. Sergeant Toole mentioned it and did a great job talking about the danger and the risk of coming in contact with floodwater. Floodwater usually is really made up of sewage, so your potential for coming in contact with infectious disease is great. As an added reminder, please don't eat or drink any material that's come in contact with floodwater. If you do, your potential for being infected with infectious agent is huge. We've had a lot of questions. Tulsa Health Department is currently offering tetanus shots at no cost to anyone affected by the floods. You can go to our website at www.tulsa-health.org/vaccines to find out our time and locations to come in. Also, if you've been affected, having contact with the floodwater, your potential for hepatitis A is great, so please call our department. We can talk you through any risk associated with that. We're getting tons of questions about mosquitoes now and disease associated with that. Our staff are currently creating an integrated pest management program to address mosquitoes after the floodwaters have started to recede. And lastly, I really want to caution any local food operators in Tulsa County who have been affected by the flood. Once the water is received, please call the health department before you reopen so we can do an inspection. We can assure that your operation is safe for the public. Thank you.
Just a couple things. First, I do want to encourage, we've had a lot of folks asking how they can volunteer to help, and also folks wanting to know just from a standpoint if they need shelter, how do they locate that? How do they get more information about the overall response that's being coordinated here? The answer is the same for all of those. People can call 211 if they want to volunteer, if they need shelter, if they need to put their pet in the emergency shelter, if they heard something and they want to confirm it one way or the other. Please call 211. That's what it's there for. The other thing that I want to close with is, once again, just tremendous gratitude for the team that we have out in the field doing all of this important work. Of course, our first responders who've been out responding to calls 24 hours a day. Heard just yesterday about, we have these markers between high-risk residential areas and the river, and these posts are a way of measuring how the water is moving towards those areas and whether or not we need to order an evacuation. We had some officers go out night before last to check on them, and were greeted by a displaced nest of water moccasins. And so that's just a reminder, one, it's dangerous to be in the river parks, just a reminder, but also that they are facing a lot of risks out there 24 hours a day in the light and the dark. Our National Guard folks were out on the levee when those tornadoes started to come in and the heavy storms over the weekend, and immediately were able to take cover and be safe. But again, they're out there subjecting themselves to this to keep our community safe. Our streets and stormwater crews have been out cutting up debris from the tornadoes that have hit our city, both in North Tulsa and in South Tulsa, to remove that, to get our streets cleared. The teams from PSO, they had just the other day, as many as 30,000 people with power out, and by the end of the day, they were down to less than 1,000. You have our water and sewer teams who are packing sandbags as fast as they can get them and delivering them to the Mabee Center at ORU so that anybody that needs a sandbag to protect your property can get it for free of charge. So there's such a broad range of people working in different ways to help protect our community, and it's remarkable to see. It's remarkable to see the level of preparation and expertise that each of these individuals has brought from their life to bear on this very moment. We'd be happy to take a couple questions if you have any.
What is happening in terms of, I know we keep urging people to take their precautions now, especially in West Tulsa along those levees. Are you all doing anything to potentially ask the governor to do a mandatory evacuation order in those areas?
We have not, because we continue, obviously 24 hours a day, to monitor the condition of the levees. And if we are ever told by the Corps experts who are monitoring that stability that there is an emergency, we will immediately evacuate that area. But I just was meeting with the Corps right before we came out here about the condition of the levees. It's our top really risk that we're monitoring, and so many people are. And right now they've reassured me that there is not an emergency there. It is high risk because it's being tested so much, but there is not an emergency at the time. The issue and the concern we have, and the reason we're encouraging folks to proactively relocate, is one, that the time frame in which people would have to evacuate that area would be fairly brief compared to the amount of time that we have to prepare for the rising tide of the river. And you would have the more people that you have trying to do that at once, the more difficult it is for everyone involved. And so the more people that can move out of there in advance of anything happening, if anything even does happen, the better it is, not just for them, but for their neighbors' ability to leave the area as well.
Our meteorologists are forecasting a lot of rain, and I know all the stations, local meteorologists are forecasting the potential, as you guys already forecasted to yourselves, for more rain. We're all very well aware of it. Are you all doing anything right now to set up or make preparations? I know you had talked about, and the governor this morning already also talked about preparations underway now for large-scale responses in the event of a worst-case scenario in terms of shelters, that type of thing, large-scale. that we might need in case of a worst-case scenario?
Absolutely. And when I say that we're preparing for the worst case scenario, I don't mean that we're just looking at the maps. I mean, we have gone through each of the areas of specificity within the emergency response team, have been doing their planning with the, in anticipation of, I guess I should say, of that 305,000 cubic feet per second flood of record that we had. So the team that's been doing our sheltering work, they have already proactively engaged large-scale sheltering operations if they're needed. Right now they're not, but if they are, we'll be prepared for that. And also, our teams have evacuation plans for those high-risk areas and are prepared to implement them if that comes to pass. Our utilities are set up and ready to deactivate utilities in those areas if an emergency evacuation needs to be made. So everyone is doing, I feel, a really good job of thinking ahead and trying to stay ahead of the ball on this as things evolve.
Commissioner Keith, I know that you for several years have had concerns about the levees and that you've been working with our federal delegation and other folks to get them strengthened, to get them repaired, and modernize them a little bit. How are those efforts coming, and do you think that this current crisis is going to help you make your case?
Well, we were actually moving forward anyway. So we're in the midst of a 2-year feasibility study. We have a year left. And that will tell us, say, let's, for example, A, B, C, D, E, F, those plans, which one makes the most sense for us. And we select a plan. And then we begin figuring out the design, engineering, and we hope to break ground in 5 years. So in the meantime, we got to hold this old girl together. And this is the biggest test of this levee. And it's interesting because different areas on the levee have created challenges than we might have expected. But again, we've got a great group of people working on that levee, and she truly is performing as she was designed. But yes, we have great support. In fact, the general this morning, he said, well, you guys better have your federal delegation. I hope they're going to help you. We were like, check. Because they've all been down here and walked the levee, you know, over the years several times. So, you know, that's an important piece of it. We need their voices behind us, supporting us. And our core team here is absolutely dedicated and working so hard on this issue. So it's kind of interesting now they're being put to the test of keep her alive till we get through. But what will happen after this emergency, this crisis is over, there will be some issues that we'll have to shore up in the interim with the levee. So that will be within probably 2 months, we'll likely have a plan for what the needs are going to be for that levee to strengthen it, to get us through the years that we need to build, unless we come up with some other alternative. So, but that's kind of the direction we're heading. But it is ongoing work, and we've even got a plan for how it gets ultimately paid for. So things are in place. We just, you know, we were hoping to avoid anything like this, but we are here, and I think everybody is handling it remarkably well. I'm just, again, so grateful for the team that's in place. Thank you.
Are you guys evacuating any of the West Tulsa buildings, the city's West Tulsa buildings, and then we have a couple of buildings over there, or mayor, whichever one of you all wants to address it?
We have relocated vehicles out of those facilities just as a precautionary measure to higher ground. I believe the individuals, the employees, are still working over there. And I do want to add one thing before we close what Commissioner Keith just said. You know, the general mentioned to us this morning, usually the study that they do when they look at a levee system like this is for 3 years. They've actually expedited it to do 3 years worth of work in 2 years. I think that says a lot about the level of importance that the Corps is placing on this, and it also says a lot about the work that Commissioner Keith has done on raising this as an issue with our delegation. And thank goodness we have a congressional delegation who understands the importance of this and has made it a priority moving ahead. Also, the citizens of Tulsa in 2 different funding programs, the most recent capital improvements programs that we passed, have funded the local match for this. And I made a point to point that out to the general this morning, that we have our local match funded and approved by the citizens. So we're in a good position on that initiative moving forward. Thank you all very much. Any of us will be available for one-on-ones after this.